I just can't take it anymore. That is what a client of mine just said to me when we got off of a client call. And what she was talking about was how she was completely spent. She was exhausted, she was overwhelmed, and not only did she have not energy to do the work that we were about to do, but she didn't feel like she had the emotional energy to do anything at all. And today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about and tap for those times in which you feel like you have reached your emotional capacity and you're exhausted and overwhelmed, and how to respond to that. This is Gene Monterastelli. Welcome to the Tapping Qanda podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 653, originally aired March 12th, 2025. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending a little time with me today. Oftentimes, we recognize the value of doing incremental things to make sure that we're staying well emotionally resourced as we navigate our day. So much so that I actually have multiple timers set up throughout the day to interrupt my day. So I stop and I do some tapping, I do some stretching, I go for a walk, I do the things to recharge myself. Because I recognize that as my resource state diminishes, the more likely I am to have an overreaction, a disproportionate, misinformed emotional response. But there are times in which our lived experience and what we are going through is just too much. No matter how much incremental stuff that we do, no matter what our morning routine looks like, no matter if we puncture our day with tapping, we can still get to a circumstance where what we are dealing with is just too much. Oftentimes, when I think of this, I think of an engine that is overheating. That once an engine overheats, once it has worked so hard, it simply fails. And it has to cool off completely before it can run again. And so today, what I want to do is I just want to give you some permission to engage with that particular thing. And I'm going to share with you a couple of things that I like to do and how I like to tap to put myself back together when I feel like I have reached the emotional end of my rope and I'm so exhausted, I don't even have the tools to be able to respond to that particular thing. And we're going to sprinkle a bunch of tapping throughout this as we work our way through it. So, number one, the first thing that I like to do is I like to acknowledge what is going on. One of the fundamentals that I work from in all of my work is all transformation starts from stating what is. Like the only way I can create change is if I'm honest about what is going on. So the first thing that I do is when I feel like I'm just completely stretched thin and I'm exhausted, I simply acknowledge that fact through some tapping. So tap with me, repeat the phrases out loud if you can do that in a safe and comfortable way. And it just looks like this. And even if you're not feeling this, you're going to enjoy this tapping. I recognize the fact I am exhausted. I am emotionally stretched thin. I am emotionally overwhelmed. And I recognize the fact that a simple round of tapping is not going to turn my resource state around. And the tapping I'm doing right now is not about turning my resource state around. Instead, I am simply allowing myself to honestly acknowledge that I'm exhausted, that I'm emotionally overheated, and I got nothing left. And it is okay for me to acknowledge and realize that is exactly where I am in this moment. I don't have to change that. I don't have to heal that. In this moment, my only responsibility is to acknowledge where I am. Nice big deep breath. It's so interesting. Even though I am not experiencing that sort of like completely stretched out at this particular moment, I feel more relaxed just by acknowledging my emotional experience. So step number one is simply acknowledge that we are exhausted. Step number two is to then normalize the fact that it's going to take a little time for us to do some self-care and some rest to put ourselves back together. So again, the tapping looks like this. Side of the hand, nice big deep breath. There is a part of me that simply wants me to bounce back. There is a part of me that wants me to be able to do the work on myself so I can do the work I need to do. But I give myself permission to recognize where I am in this moment is not something I'm going to immediately bounce back from. And so I give myself permission to know that it is okay to acknowledge that this is going to take time. This is going to take effort. This is going to take deliberate intent. Even though there is a part of me that wants to heal and wants to heal right now, I give myself permission to see that this is going to be a process. And the only way I'm going to get back to a useful resource state is to give myself permission to take the time I need. Nice big deep breath. So we've acknowledged that we are exhausted. We've normalized the fact that it's going to take some time for us to get back. The third thing that we can do is we can then make conscious decisions to eliminate the emotional, the intellectual, the mental, the practical strain on where we are. Now, we're not always in a circumstance where we can rearrange everything. But when I am in this particular state, when I am stretched this thin, if I'm in a circumstance where I can't just stop moving altogether and there are things that need to be done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to the front of the queue the things that are significantly less taxing. I might fold laundry, reorganize my office, do some manual data entry, delete a bunch of things out of my inbox, which I don't need to respond to and I don't need to see. And so you'll notice I'm not like responding to all my emails, but I'm doing a small, lower version of it. And this is going to do a couple of things. Number one, it's going to get things off of our plate. Things that need to get done are going to get done. Number two, as we get things done, we're going to get a little sense of momentum as we recognize it's possible for us to move forward in that particular way. So we have acknowledged our exhaustion. We have given ourselves permission to recognize it's going to take time. We've removed and reduced the amount of things that we need to be doing. Then what we're going to do is we're going to create some very concrete steps of things that we need to do to get healthier. So this is one of the reasons why I love having a menu of things that restore me, because the time that I need the menu of things to restore me is the time that the time that I need to be restored is the time I'm least likely to remember things. Therefore, having a menu is something that serves me really, really well inside of that. So what I would encourage you to do, pause this right now when you get done with this, but if you're in a more well-resourced state, make a list of all of the things that you can do to restore you. And they don't just have to be health and well-being things. I find watching particular movies that lift my spirit as restorative, even if I fall asleep and take a nap while watching those particular things. So for me, oftentimes when I'm consuming content as I'm restoring I'm going back to old familiar things. I can remember a number of months ago where I was sick and I was diminished and I was all of those things. And so 3 days in a row, I watched Ocean's 11 because it was something that was calming, because it was something that was easy for me to follow. It was something that was enjoyable. And so it gave me a chance to be present without being mentally taxed, but be entertained and engaged with what is going on. So we need to be deliberate about the things that we need to be doing to start doing the restoration. So we're acknowledging our exhaustion. Two, we're normalizing the fact that we can't do everything. We need to create some space for ourselves. Three, we're going to choose to do tasks that are significantly less taxing if we have to do tasks. Four, we're going to consciously do things that are restorative. Some of them are about emotional and health and well-being to do that. Some of them are just things that are gentle for us as we are creating and stepping into that. Number five, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to clearly communicate boundaries to the people around us that we are spent. So when I am in a circumstance like this and there are people who are dependent on me, I have documents to turn in, I have meetings to go to, I have things that are deliverables in my personal life, in my professional life, I just let the people know that I'm struggling. Because if I was in a circumstance where if I was in bed with a fever and sweating and a headache, it would be easy for me to call the people in my life, or it would be easier for me to call the people in my life and say, hey, I'm really, really sick right now. I can't do this. I have a fever of 102 and my body aches. And almost everybody in my life would accept that. We don't feel like we can say the exact same thing when we are as emotionally spent and we're emotionally exhausted. You have permission from me, and I'll write you a note if you need it. Send me an email. I will literally write you a permission slip. You have permission to postpone, to create boundaries because you are mentally exhausted, because you're physically exhausted. The reason why when we're sick, we get a pass is because people recognize we're not capable of doing it. If the people in our life can't recognize it right now, just tell them you can't do it because you physically cannot do it right now, and you don't have to go into details. But it's super, super important that you give yourself permission to create boundaries and to manage expectations. Because if you expect me to do something and I'm so exhausted I can't do it well, you're going to be really disappointed with my outcome because I can't manage what's going on because I'm sick and because I'm overwhelmed. And so by doing this, not only am I taking care of myself, but I'm also taking care of the people around me by creating realistic expectations of what is going on. And so then the last thing that we do is every so often, for me at morning, afternoon, like twice a day or every day, just check in and reevaluate where you are. So that you create a plan for today. I'm going to reorganize my schedule. I'm going to tap to give myself permission to do this. I'm going to do something that is restorative. Tomorrow, I'm going to reevaluate what is going on. I do the exact same thing when I'm physically sick. By giving myself a little space, I'm able to go, okay, what can I get done today? And, at least for me, one of the things I consistently do is I think I'm healthier than I actually am. I'm getting over a cold. I'm like, oh, I got energy. I can be awesome today. And by 10:30, my body is like, oh, and I've lost it again. This is no different. Even if on day 2, day 3, day 4, as you're putting yourself back together, you feel better, just because you feel better in a moment, just because you feel better at the beginning of the day, does not mean you are all the way back. And so give yourself permission to take the time. So when you find yourself in a circumstance where you are just exhausted emotionally at the end of your rope, number one, give yourself permission to acknowledge that's exactly where you are. Number two, normalize the fact that you're going to take care of yourself. Number three, reschedule your life in such a way so that you can if you can, put the things aside that you can put aside so that you can restore. Then what you're going to do is you're just going to find some ways to do small incremental things to make yourself feel better. Number five, you're going to create some boundaries. You're going to communicate clearly. And six, you're just going to reassess and give yourself permission to take time over time to get better. I know how hard it is to be in a circumstance to claim struggle for something that can't be seen. Even when we're sick, I look fine and it's hard for me to do it. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to the people around you that when you are stretched thin in this particular way, to take the time to take the space. And if you need to, just tap with me. I give myself permission to know that it is okay for me to take care of myself. Even though it's non-visible, even though some of the people in my life won't understand, I have to do this. Because if I don't do this, I will not be healthy in the future, and it will get worse. Even though people can't see it, even though some people can't understand it, I give myself permission to take care of myself because no one else is going to do it for me. And if I don't take care of it now, it will get worse. It will be harder to bounce back from, and it will impact me more. And so by giving myself permission to do this, I'm investing in myself, this moment, and the future. So just some simple tapping like that to give yourself permission to engage with it. So overwhelm is a real thing. Being completely stretched to the point that you cannot do anything because of the emotional strain and stress that you're under is a real thing. Don't believe anybody who tells you otherwise. Those are 6 simple things that you can do in a little tapping to be able to engage with that. Now, if you know someone in your life who could use the instruction that we just shared right here, please be our ambassador, pass it along. We always joke about the fact that our marketing budget is your word of mouth. Just think of someone in your life who might be able to use this. Send them a note. Just say, hey, I was thinking of you. You might find this useful. Even if they don't tap along to any of this, the fact that you've reached out is going to make their day better because they know you are thinking of them. Yes, that sounds cheesy because it is, but it is also true. Also, as you look at the screen right now, you can see a playlist of all of the Tapping Q&A podcast videos waiting there for you. There's over 250 hours of free training waiting there. Click on the link, dive into that, and I look forward to talking with you and tapping with you again real soon. Bye-bye.